We have just now had a seminar on building resilient societies and Sweden's total defense strategy. With amongst the panelists, we had Carl-Oskar Bohlin, Minister for Civil Defense. We had Anders Forsberg, who's the head of disaster management at the Swedish Red Cross. We had Jens Mattsson, the Director General of the Swedish Defense Research Agency. And we had Sara Myrdal, who's the Director of International Affairs and Head of Department for International Relations, Research and Innovation at the Swedish Civil Defense and Resilience Agency. So my key takeaway from this discussion, I'll actually start with what the minister said in the very beginning, and he stated that we have been living in an 80-year anomaly that is now coming to an end, meaning that since the after the Second World War, we lived in this false reality that we thought that we almost had eternal peace in Europe. Even during the Cold War, we had very, very limited scale in terms of direct conflict between the East and the West in Europe, at the very least. We had this sort of strategic timeout where Sweden and European countries believe that we can disregard hard security and leave it to someone else to take care of us, essentially. And in that case, we relied on the US to a great extent, and we still face this problem. I thought it was very interesting that one of the references that the panelists made in that we are currently paying for home insurance, and this is paramount to actually achieving and sustaining the social contract between the state and the citizens. And as a student of political science and someone who is quite fond of the old traditional thinkers, I found it very interesting that they explicitly referenced Thomas Hobbes as well. And I thought the minister put it very well when he said that it is more important to be good enough tomorrow than to be perfect in 5 or 10 years. In that we are currently in a situation that requires our immediate attention, and we cannot reach perfection. Perfection is a goal that is unrealistic. It's not possible to reach within the time frame that we need to act. And as such, it is this concept of good enough. It's healthy to also accept that this is what we can achieve right now. And we also need to realize that we cannot decide what time that we live in, but what we can control and decide is what we do with the time that we are living in. And hence, it is very important that we see this scale up of total defense and how we see that Sweden and Northern Europe, the NBA countries, Poland, Canada, that we implement this total defense structure, this concept of whole of society needs to be involved in defending our shared values. One thing that also stuck with me was, and that I often think that we fail to talk about, is that what we are seeing in Ukraine at the moment is total war in its entirety. And we often fail to make this reference when we talk about the need for total defense. The need for total defense is also in direct correlation with how modern wars are fought, in that it is a total war concept. The Russians aren't limiting their targets to only military or political targets. They are targeting civilian infrastructure, the energy grids, they're targeting hospitals, first aid workers. And as such, we need to have this whole of society approach. I think the one thing that also stuck with me and that I will wrap up this summary with is that Sweden and European societies have a tendency to be great at dismantling things. And it is always easier to dismantle something in comparison to rebuilding it. And this is the challenge that we are seeing currently. And I think that the Director General of the Defense Research Agency put it very well when he talked about this total defense concept. It also differs between the understanding of this differs between Northern Europe, the as I mentioned, the MB8 plus Poland, Canada, and if you compare this with the understanding that they have in Southern Europe, for example, where they might not see the immediate threat being Russia, but perhaps instead migration flows from North Africa, or the energy grid or the communication links between the US or and mainland Europe. So I think this would be my key takeaways from this seminar. Thank you.